Jerseys of Hope is a nonprofit committed to inspiring a sense of community and well-being in hospitals through the donation of athletic jerseys to be worn by patients rooting for their favorite team. In the past 7 years, Jerseys of Hope has given out over 2,000 jerseys to lift the spirits of hospital patients. They have impacted the needy in 4 countries and 11 states. Please visit jerseysofhope.org to learn more. We're so honored to partner with Jerseys of Hope and be a small part of the large impact they make.
I've known pain in my heart, I've known pain in my body. I've asked God the questions all time and again. Is there anything too hard for you? I've seen the morning.
Hey everyone, this is Aaron. Welcome back to the Unscripted Podcast. Unscripted comes to you each episode from our Jerseys of Hope studios here in Columbus, Ohio. You can find out more about them at jerseysofhope.org. Our new intro song is called Stand on Your Promises by my dear friend and recording artist Kate Stanford. It was written and performed by Kate Stanford, Jamie Jangoshan, and Sam Hart. Produced by Sam Hart. You can find Kate on all your streaming platforms at katestanfordmusic.com. But for now, here's today's episode.
All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted. Wow, I'm blown away today. I got a special guest. If you're watching on video, my man's got a good setup and he's got good cameras, and we just spent a few minutes in pregame talking about his setup, so I appreciate his time on that. Let me go ahead and just run through a quick introduction. My guest today, Mr. Roy Hall Jr., he is a motivational speaker, executive coach, and former NFL wide receiver. He was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in the 5th round of the 2007 NFL draft. He played college for some local, I think it was a small school here locally called Ohio State. I think, does I get that right? Is it Ohio State?
The Ohio State University.
I'm sorry, the Ohio State University. All kidding aside, Roy is currently a motivational speaker, executive coach, and he is a podcast. He is a podcast host, and honestly, his podcast is what I want mine to be when I grow up. He's inspiring people through corporate environment, through lessons learned with his NFL and football career. He's executive director and co-founder of the Columbus, Ohio-based nonprofit Driven Foundation. Please help me welcome my guest, Mr. Roy Hall. Man, thank you so much. And I have 2 other things to say to you. But man, let me throw it to you. Mr. Roy, did I miss anything in there?
You know what? That was perfect. That was perfect. I appreciate it, man. And you read it with enthusiasm. I've had some awful introductions before in person, and where I had a guy one time bring me to the stage. And this is one thing that you learn just kind of over the years of, when you're speaking in front of your introduction sets the tone for the entire rest of the speech. And I had a guy come up to the stage, somebody that was a sponsor. So there's the event management team or whatever, and then there was a sponsor, and they say, hey, here's Roy's bio, just get to know him a little bit and then go up and introduce him as the main sponsor of this event. He went up there and he said, hey, everybody, I really don't speak that much. Okay, Roy. And that was it. It's like, what? Really? Now I got to go up there and introduce myself with extra enthusiasm. He literally walked up and was like, hey, I'm really not a public speaker or anything. All right, Roy. And that was it. No first name, no last name, no information. They don't know where I'm from. So I had to do all of that. So now, I let them know it's actually written in the contract. Like, here's the introduction. This is what I need you to do. Either play this video or here's the bio that you can use, and you can't read it from the bio. You got to get to know me a little bit. I mean, could you imagine like if we did anything and you said, oh man, my man Roy Hall's coming, I know him, we're good friends, so forth and so on, and then you got up on stage and you had to read my bio, like read it word for word, like, in front of a whole bunch of people. It's different when we're doing podcasts and things, but word for word in front of, like, people like, do you even know this guy? You know what I mean? Like, so it's contractually like we got to get the intros right.
Right. Well, and luckily we don't have a contract. No. Thank God for Wikipedia, because honestly, man, that's where I pulled it. I'm not gonna lie.
There you go.
But I will say we do know each other. So, and you teed me up perfect. It's like you almost have a podcast that's really good and stuff. Because man, like the 2 things I was gonna say is the first time we met, man, it was in a conference room, and you walk in all muscles bulging and everything else because you're pretty well put together, man. I'm just gonna say, like I said on Twitter today, we're not gonna compare muscles because you got me on that one, and it's not close. But man, you walk into this conference room, muscles bulging, NFL career, Ohio State player, man. You're the guy, and you walk in and you treat me like we'd known each other forever. And that's the first thing I wanted to say was, man, that meant the world to a guy like myself that I never met you before, and you treated me with just a kindness and respect. And man, I felt like we walked away that day friends. And so that leads to number two is a couple weeks later, it just the world being as small as it is, we ran into each other in Michigan, and we both had somebody competing in this little whatever it was. I don't even know what it was. It was one of our kids were competing at something. And man, again, you treated me like we'd been friends forever. And I won't forget that. And that's why as soon as I had the opportunity, I wanted you to come on because we are friends. And like you said, I felt like you treated me like a friend from day one. And that's so important. So I think that leads us probably into a lot of what we want to talk about today in terms of leadership. And just we didn't, again, we are unscripted. So you had asked, you sent me a message to say what we were talking about. I said,
hey, man, I'll try and get prepared, Aaron.
You sent me a message. I said, I don't know, man. It's unscripted. Right.
So I don't know what we talking about.
Let me leave it at that. At the end of the day, what I want people to know is, man, the few times you and I have had interaction, you treated me like I've known you forever. And maybe it's because we're both from Cleveland. Shout out 216. But that being aside, man, what's going on in Roy Hall's world?
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I don't know if you get higher ratings or, people leave you better reviews when you make them cry and you get transparent. They talk to you about that transparency, right? Now everybody's like, oh man, Aaron's a great guy, man. He's sharing his heart right now. You know what I mean? Like you making people cry, man. You
I try not to. Yeah.
You connected to the listeners. No, that's good. I think, let me say this before I answer your question. One of the responsibilities as a leader, one of the responsibilities as, I guess, the captain of the ship, but most importantly, one of the responsibilities as a human is to recognize that the person that you're encountering or the person that you're having a conversation with, the person that you meet could be the person that changes your life forever, or you could change their life forever. Mm-hmm. A conversation can impact an entire community. One conversation can spark the trajectory of an entire country being changed. Just one conversation.
Yep.
Where you can have, for example, a teacher tell a young man or a young woman, you have the potential to be the next president of the United States. You have the potential to take your expertise in science or biology and create the cure for cancer. That's a real thing. Right. And just from a conversation. So how you treat people it shouldn't be, I don't know you, so I'm not going to expose you to me. It should be, I don't know you, but I do know that you have a heart. Your heart may be hardened. Your heart may be distorted. Your heart may be, and I'm talking from a metaphorical sense. It may be something going on in you, but just a high five from me, a word of encouragement, me wearing a t-shirt that says something inspirational on it, or me just spending 5 minutes with you and you knowing that I'm a former Buckeye, a former NFL player could be just enough to, in that moment, get you through the next day. And that day could have been the worst day of your life until we encountered each other. So I just believe that human beings have a superpower that's on the inside of them. And it's not until you become selfless and like, yo, you and I are we're the same. Like, hey, we breathing, right? Both of us breathe and inhale and exhale 23,000 times every day on average. Each human being on average has 108,000 heartbeats. Like you get those and I get those. We both get our 86,400 seconds. We both get an entire day, 24 hours. We still get that. And so if we get that, when I meet you, I got 5 minutes and I may never encounter you again. But what if I said something, or you said something to me, or you made a deposit, or I made a deposit, or whatever it was that sparked a friendship or relationship to have you and me on a conversation here years later that's making a difference all around the world as people listen to you. And so I think people need to take more advantage of, instead of looking. So what people do is they find out who they want to meet and they try and position themselves to meet that person because they'll benefit from it, or it'll advance them some way, somehow. And instead of trying to position yourself to meet a certain person, you should position yourself or recognize the position that you're in to influence and impact the people that come in contact with you every single day. Because if you're not giving a common person or the person that's on your level the time of day, you don't even deserve to talk to the person that you're trying to get to. So I don't know how I got on that tangent. It's unscripted. So I figured I would throw that in there.
I was just going to say, what are the links? Because we're almost done. Because that shut it down. No, I'm just kidding. Don't shut off yet. Don't shut it off yet.
There you go.
No, man, that preach. And if you ever see me looking aside, people know this. If you ever see me looking aside, I'm not listening. I'm making notes.
Oh, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not worried about you right now. I'm on the platform. But you can eat a piece of chicken if you want to. You can do whatever you need to do, brother.
I might go get some right quick.
Go for it.
One of the notes I made, and I want to go back to that because you talked about a school teacher, man. There was a story of Stevie Wonder, and I'm going to ruin the story. And if you Google it, you'll probably find it different. But there was a teacher, and the teacher said there was a mouse loose in the. Have you ever heard this story about Stevie Wonder? So there was, and I ruined it by telling you who the student was. But there was a mouse loose in a classroom, and the teacher could not figure it out where it was, and so they finally went to the student, and they said, "Hey, you have this unbelievable, ear for things. Can you help us find?" And it was Stevie Wonder. And Stevie Wonder discovered who he was because the teacher imposed in him and said, "Hey, we got to find this mouse." Now, that may not be true. I don't know. But that's the story as I've always heard it. But to your point, someone somewhere can impart wisdom into us. The other question I had for you that I wrote down is where. So you've learned this. This isn't, or were you born this way? How did you know what you just imparted into me? Were there people in your life that imparted that into you, or were you just born with that wisdom and knowledge that you just imparted on all of us?
No, I think it's learned. I think it's learned and it's trained. And it's also recognizing that your respective platform is still a platform, no matter how high or how low you believe it is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is ingrained in you. Usually, like I learned most of it in college, where you may be uncomfortable or a little bit apprehensive about stepping out and talking to people and greeting people and having conversation about, say, Ohio State football. But that's the part of the responsibility that comes with the platform, because that's the part that they don't teach you. As you are elevated, your responsibility to take care of others increases. And so the more people that want to rise to a certain level, for example, if you want every single time that you have a podcast episode, you want 1 million people listening, 2 million, 10 million, I want 10 million downloads okay. But when you get 10 million people downloading your podcast every single week, now all of a sudden your responsibility and what you say is critical. So it's no longer we can just go as unscripted as we want to, because if you get the wrong guest saying the wrong thing and it goes out to 10 million people, it could impact people and tear people down or whatever it may be. So the higher you get, the more you got to understand you may not want to do it, but you get to do it. And the opposite could be true, where you don't have your position and you don't have anybody that wants to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And so when you meet someone, when you talk to someone, as much as it's like, I just want to be out here at my daughter's track meet, or, hey man, listen, I just want to shop and buy some bottled water, bro. Like, hey man, look, I just want to come into the store. Like, I don't want to talk. Hey man, I know I wear a size large t-shirt when I should be wearing a 2XL. I know my t-shirt is tight and my arms look big. You ain't got to tell me like that may be how you feel initially, but usually that first emotion or that first thought is usually one that's selfish and it's coming from your ego. So you got to bypass that one to get to the second or third thing, which is, you know what, this man or this young man or this young woman or this teacher or whoever it may be is somebody that you can impact and inspire in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes just by hanging out with them for a few seconds. Mm-hmm. And you got to also figure that they got some negative experiences with maybe some people that are celebrities or former athletes or whatever it may be. So now all of a sudden, and this is for a common person also, you don't know how people think about you until, like, if you're, for example, if you're a black person, if you've never encountered a white person, then you walk and you end up walking down the street past a white person and you say hello and they don't speak to you, or vice versa. immediately it gets logged as this type of person, and this is who they are, and all those people are wrong. Right. Every time that you talk to someone, it's an opportunity to learn, and it's an opportunity to teach. And so I think that was developed in me at The Ohio State University. Coach Tressel had this saying, remember who you are. And it carries so much weight. Not only was he saying, make sure that you know who you represent, scarlet and gray, you represent The Ohio State University, this entire football team, you represent your family's last name. But now all of a sudden it's remember who you are to me. Hey, remember you're a human being and people are going through things. So whoever you talk to is an opportunity for them to see your heart. It's an opportunity for you to reveal who you really are in that moment or two. They may like it, they may not, but it's better than them making assumptions. So to get back to your original question, like 2 questions ago, what am I up to? This is what I'm up to, working in corporate America, motivating professionals, motivating people to stay motivated, right? Keep a positive perspective and to walk in purpose. And so that podcast, working in the community through the Driven Foundation, these are all things that I'm doing. What's coming out of my mouth is me trying to best articulate, what it is that I do on a daily basis, which is help people.
Yeah. So, and I hate to go back to it. It sounds like Coach Tressel had a huge influence on your life. Is that fair to say?
Oh, it's more than fair. And it wasn't necessarily kind of constant, direct conversations. It's just you see how people lead. And he's an action-oriented leader. And he put in systems and believed in the things that he already had and believed in his people. And so you kind of watch. I wasn't the guy that go into Coach Tressel's office and sit down and talk about playing time and I need to play more. And, I just wasn't that guy. I'm not built that way. And some guys are. Some guys need to go in and talk and vent. And I just wasn't that guy. And I believe that just watching and paying attention to what worked carries over. And so there's a reason why people win national championships. There's a reason why you can get hired from a Youngstown State to The Ohio State University primarily off of your character more than your experience at the D1 level. I mean, obviously he was a national champion, multiple national champion at Youngstown State, but it's like, hey, we will hire this man off of his character. And there's something about knowing the process. I tell people all the time, your character determines your destiny. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, it's not what you do. Well, I'll say it this way. Your thoughts lead to your feelings to your decisions to your actions over the course of time develop your habits produce and engineer your character determines your destiny. People get hired and fired not because of their talent. People get hired and fired based on their character. I got hurt my first year in Indianapolis. I blew out my shoulder. My second year, I had a knee surgery, missed 13 weeks. My third year, messed up my knee, missed the entire season. And Indianapolis kept me on the roster for 3 straight years. You don't get 3 straight years on a Super Bowl winning and Super Bowl contending team unless you have a high character, especially if you get hurt every single month, every single year. They gave me 3 years to the point where I can get my pension and all that vested, all that, because Indianapolis said, we're going to keep you around, not necessarily because you showed everything that you could do on the field. And we know you got potential. So part of it was potential, but the other part was character. How many people listening right now has a job and they have a position and they got hired or elevated or promoted because of their character, not necessarily because of their resume? And then you got other people that are super talented, amazing at what they do, but they're like, you know what? I can't trust this character. So I can't trust who she is or how she's going to respond to adversity or how he's going to respond when things don't go their way. So I'd rather just cut ties now than to have this thing come up later. Your character determines your destiny.
Man, so much wisdom already. And so now let me take it back to what you're doing now, because anyone listening, if you're driving down the road, you're probably listening, you're out for a walk or run or wherever people listen to this, wherever it lands, you're probably hearing the enthusiasm, the wisdom that Roy is bringing here. So now if I'm walking, let's just say I'm with a business, or let me take it back to what you said after Tressel. I apologize for going back to Tressel, but I'm kind of a Tressel guy. I'm not an Ohio State man. I know. I mean, sure. I'm a Carolina guy.
I understand the difference.
Hey, I'm a Carolina guy, but I will always respect Jim Tressel. I'm just going to say that flat out. I have a ton of respect for him in his job that he did here and all that. Anyway, so you now are speaking, you have your podcast. So let's talk about that, because I think people are hearing this and going, man, I have, hopefully they haven't logged off and gone to follow your podcast. Hopefully they'll do that at the end. But at the end of the day, follow his podcast, because I think you're hearing the wisdom and knowledge that Roy is clearly passionate about. If I'm a business and I hear this wisdom and I say, man, I need to inspire my team with this kind of inspiration. And clearly you're very articulate and very good at this. What's my next path if someone wants to bring you in?
No, that's simple. Please go to RoyHallJr.com. RoyHallJr.com lays out some of the things that I speak on, whether it be low motivation, staying engaged, specifically now going back to work with the pandemic, kind of fizzling its way out, so to speak, keeping people engaged, how to transition back from being in the virtual world to being in person, teamwork, communication, the heavier things. And they're like, hey, well, where's your experience in that? And a lot of it comes from that time I spent in the NFL as a professional. You have a $1 billion owner, you have general managers, you have front office people, you got a Hall of Fame quarterback and Peyton Manning with Hall of Fame receivers and Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne and the Hall of Fame coach and Tony Dungy. You got to know how to communicate, and you pick up some things on how to be a great professional. If you hear a lot of these NFL and NBA and NHL and MLB interviews, people talk about, man, you got to be a pro, you got to be a professional. And so people need to be inspired and motivated in those areas. And so again, RoyHallJr.com. It's real simple. I mean, the fall is filling up for 21. And so, it might be something in 22 that you might be able to get me into, but that's the piece. And the biggest thing, Aaron, is that you find out that it's not necessarily like people can't perform under pressure or perform in high stress environments. A lot of it is carryover from their private and personal life. So I'm the mindset guy. This is the thinking of a leader. This is what the mindset is of a great leader. This is how they fight through and filter through adversity or when things don't go their way. And so I kind of lay those out and really challenge people in my words and my delivery, but I'm looking forward to it. So I know some people listening right now, take the step, go to RoyHallJr.com and just click on the check availability button, and we can get the information going and we can go from there and get to know each other a little bit, have maybe a little brief consultation and go from there.
And I highly recommend it. I know that we've met twice, and the 2 times we met in person, man, you make me feel like I was family, and that means something too. And I have a feeling you'll walk in a room and be the same way with any company that wants to check that availability. So the second thing is your podcast, right? So you launched the podcast, which is awesome, by the way. Like I said, it's what I want mine to be when it grows up. Yours looks better. You look better. So I got to get in better shape, but your camera looks great. Everything looks real good, man. You're doing great. And the episodes I've listened to are awesome. A lot of really what you're breaking down right here for us on this episode. So talk to us about the podcast. When did you start that and what's going on?
Yeah. So we're about 10 episodes in right now. And to be honest, our co-founder of the Driven Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization we started back in 2009, I believe. But so Antonio Smith, another former Ohio State football player, and we started a podcast called Always Ready when the pandemic started. Now, primarily it was a video podcast, and we didn't really do a lot of the audio. So we just kind of made a video YouTube, but it was just kind of keeping people up to date. We talked about anything. Now remember this, Tiger King all the way through the bubble playoffs. So we just we had to keep ourselves busy.
I got to listen to that.
In the process of talking about Tiger King, what I started doing was taking those moments and breaking them down into different messages. And so while we were talking about just our opinions on that episode, I would kind of take a step back. And what we started doing with these personal and professional development trainings later in the week after we recorded the podcast. So if I talked about Tiger King, I would probably do a message on being caged, right? What does it feel like being locked up in fear, locked up in depression, and like how to escape that? So I would take whatever we talked about on the podcast on the light way and turn it into a development opportunity. And we did that throughout the pandemic. And then once things started shifting, we kind of went away from it. And I said, you know what I can do is do more of the development piece. And so now I still have a personal, I call it personal excellence and leadership, or PXL. We do those trainings on Thursday, which I'm going to actually open up to the public here within the next 30 days for people to get a 45-minute personal excellence training in leadership every single Thursday. And so we do 5-week series. And so we'll open that up. So that turns into the podcast. A lot of those teachings turn into the podcast. So my podcast is not an interview format like this, which I think is absolutely awesome. And most podcasts are. Mine is direct. motivation, encouragement, perspective driven. And you get to hear me kind of get all over the place and get wild and get passionate about trying to get you to become the very best personal and professional that you can be for that particular week. And it's been going extremely well. And the reviews have been great. And again, I'm leveraging that again to create another avenue to penetrate another layer of influence, which is through your ears. You know what I mean? Some people see things and most people hear things. And so you want to make sure they're hearing the right things.
And the things that I've heard maybe want to run through a brick wall. So they're real good, man. You mentioned Driven. Let's talk about Driven for a minute.
Sure.
Let's talk about Driven. Just tell me all about it. If no one's familiar with it, talk to me about Driven.
Let me give you a number real quick.
Okay.
AC. So 1 out of 7 people in Ohio struggles with hunger. 1 in 5 children in Ohio struggles with hunger. Now, I know we're touching states all around the country right now with this podcast. And I would imagine that no matter where you're listening to or wherever you're from, those statistics are relatively similar. And so there has to be more than just the food banks that are addressing this problem. It has to be more than just your traditional food drive in your office where there's 17 cans, unopened stuff from people's pantries that they just threw in because somebody put a sign in a plastic tub that said, hey, we can help an organization by collecting some food. You have to do a little bit more. I actually challenged the Ohio State football team as I went and spoke to them not too long ago. And the question was, do you have heart? And usually it's, do you have heart? Meaning, do you have courage? Do you have the ability? Do you have perseverance? Do you have the ability to fight and scratch? Right. That's a different type of heart. But I'm talking about, do you care enough? Do you have empathy? Do you have compassion? Do you have heart? Right. Do you have enough care? Do you care enough to do something? Right. And so the Driven Foundation was developed again and started, me and Antonio Smith, because we wanted to use our platform as former Ohio State players. And then at the time, current NFL players, to do a little bit more than just teach kids how to run 40-yard dash and catch footballs and make tackles. And we understood that while we have this platform and we'll continue to leverage it as best we can, we need to make a difference. And so we provide basic human needs to families to combat poverty and to build hope. And so you think, okay, let me think. Basic human needs. Is that food? Yes. Is that clothing? Yes. Is that shelter? Yes. Is that school supplies? Yes. So is that hygiene products? Absolutely. So to combat poverty, yes, and then also to build hope, because you can give a family a week's worth of food. We've distributed 1.25 million pounds of free food to over 9,000 families since 2009. You can give a family a week's worth of food, and that week's worth of food that you take the stress and you take the burden off of those families could be the reason why they can focus now on building their resume so that they have the confidence to then go and do that job interview and get a job and never have to receive another free box of food again. And so you're building hope and building momentum by providing a basic need to these people who didn't ask to be in poverty. They didn't huddle up with all their prayer partners and say, hey, pray that I am in poverty and struggling for the next 15 years. Right. People find themselves in situations to sometimes no fault of their own. Sometimes it is, but many times it's not. I was one of those families and born and lived in one of those families that needed those hand ups, so to speak, and opportunities for people to help us. My dad had some challenges with substance abuse. Him and my mom split, and she was raising 2 kids on her own, working 2 jobs. Now, all of a sudden, things look a little bit different. And so when you remember being a kid and you open the refrigerator and there's water and there's milk with an expiration date that was 3 or 4 or 5 days prior, and there's nothing else in the refrigerator, there's no pantry, there's some crackers and maybe some bread. Like, you remember not having these things. And so you're like, wow, my mom didn't ask for this. And I would imagine that even in 2021, there are people and families struggling and they didn't ask for that. So I remember where I was. I know where I am today, and I also know where these families are today. And I, just as much as I didn't want to be in that position, I don't want them in this position either. And so I need to do my part. Again, do you care enough to do something about the problem? And it's like the old saying, it's not the old saying, it's my saying, don't complain, contribute. So stop telling me about what's going on and contribute to the solution. And that's what we do with the Driven Foundation.
Man, there's a lot of passion in those words, and there's a lot of truth and perspective from someone who lived it, as he just said. So, one of the things we did a few years ago was, and this is probably, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, we were spending every Christmas, I don't know, man, it was a stupid amount of money on our little Christmas photo that we sent out to everybody that already probably didn't need it or whatever. And it was about the time social media came along. And I'm like, why do we do this? And I found out, and we got a card in the mail from, I think it was a Mid-Ohio Food Bank or it wasn't. I can't remember the name of it now. Lutheran Brotherhood, I believe is, anyway, whoever it was. My wife does our bills, as you can see or hear. But every year we get this card, and it's like $2.75 to feed someone for Thanksgiving meal. $2.75, man. How much are we blowing on this card that somebody's going to put in a basket or put on their refrigerator for 2 weeks and then throw away once Christmas is past? Like that doesn't make sense. And my point in all of that is to say, sometimes you don't have to go out and make more money to help someone. Just redirect the funds that you're maybe spending on something that just doesn't make sense. When we could put it on Facebook, we can post our picture of our Christmas family every year and say, hey, Merry Christmas from the Conrads. And now I can take those funds that we were spending on something and redirect them to someone else. I mean, what I'm saying? Like, maybe it's Netflix. Maybe we spend money on stuff. And as you said so passionately a minute ago, man, as I always say, we need to, from a song I heard, you need to take your so-called problems and put them in quotations, because somebody's got it a lot worse, man. And our problems, a flat tire, whatever it might be, when you look at that in the scope of the lens of someone else that could use our help and we can provide it, man, we need to do better. And so anyway, now I'm on a rant, but
no.
That's what I feel, man.
I wrote down the word redirect. I really like that, because it just has to matter to you. It has to matter to you.
Right.
It has to matter. I read this article, AC, and it was about this gentleman named Kenneth Smith, if I remember his name correctly. And this gentleman was experiencing homelessness. This is a story out of Texas, and he's experiencing homelessness. And the first thing that you got to understand when you talk about, because people say, oh man, he's homeless, or we got to help feed the homeless. And what people don't understand is, people call it politically correct. I just call it I like the correct way of saying things. If I'm watch this. I could either call you homeless, or I can say you're experiencing homelessness. There's a huge difference. It's one thing about labels. When people label you, they limit you, right? So if I call you homeless, I am limiting you and your thinking. And literally every time I say the word homeless, you see that as your ceiling. Like, this is who you are. This is what your reality is. And this is what you're going to be. You're not going to be more than that. And I'm looking you in the face as I give you a free meal and still calling you homeless.
Right.
So it said he's experiencing homelessness. And I said, think about how many people who are experiencing it. And here's the thing about the definition of experience. It means it's temporary. It means it's coming to an end. So if you're experiencing depression, or experiencing a loss in your family, or experiencing a fight against cancer, or experiencing a job loss, or experiencing a promotion, or experiencing a wedding, or like, it could go both ways. But these are things that are going to eventually come to an end. And it said this gentleman who's experiencing homelessness, it said that he was panhandling outside of an Outback Steakhouse. He's panhandling outside of an Outback Steakhouse. The story goes on to say that so I did a message on patience surrounding this gentleman, but it said sometimes he'd fall asleep, whatever it may be. But the story says that a stranger walked past and tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? He said, I'm starving. I'm starving. And then I started thinking, because this has a couple different things I want to talk about real quick, Aaron. The first being, when someone asks you, are you okay? How are you doing? How's your day going? 98% of human beings, oh, I'm good.
Right.
How are you? You're lying.
Right.
You're absolutely lying.
Yep.
So while you're going through something and fighting something inside of your mind by yourself, the universe has sent God says, someone came to you and said, how are you doing? Out of pride and ego, you won't tell the truth. I don't know you well enough. If someone said, how are you today? And you were honest, like, I'm going through a lot right now.
Yeah.
That person has to make a decision. He or she is never going to ask that question again, or worst case scenario,
right,
they will listen to you and hopefully give you some encouragement. They may be even the person that have gone through exactly what you're going through, but they don't even know that you need help. A lot of people feel like I need help and there's no one to help me, but it's not that there's no one to help you. It's just that you're unwilling to say, yo, I'm jacked up right now.
Right.
Like I'm going through something I've never experienced in my life before.
Yeah.
And it said that this man said, I'm starving. This lady walked into the Outback Steakhouse, not $5. Talk about redirect. Not $10, not $2, not I'm just going to get you a meal. She got $100 gift card.
Wow.
Walked back outside.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. The value to her was $100, and regular people money is $100. Like you could think about all the many things you could spend $100 on. But to somebody that has nothing, $100 is like me and you making $100,000 and somebody giving us 10 million. Yeah. Right? You get $100 gift card when you're starving. The value on that is unbelievable.
Right.
So he takes the gift card. In the process, the manager of the Outback is like, she watches the lady get the $100 gift card and go back outside and gives this man a $100 gift card. She's like, oh my goodness, that was so kind of her. The guy comes in with the $100 gift card ready to spend it. The lady at Outback said, you keep that, but you never have to pay for a meal here again. Then she said, I want to sit down and eat with you. Look at these investments. Look at this hope being invested.
Yeah.
Then she talks to the man, and she's quoted in this article as saying, he is so great to my customers. What? Right. The guy that's outside making some people not want to walk in is great to your customers?
Right.
Well, it said two things to me. One, there are people that we know need our help that for whatever reason we won't help until we see someone around us help them first. Yeah. That manager could have gave that gentleman food, but she didn't. But it wasn't until that one of her customers did something nice for him that she said, I can do something too. But the part that I really want to get to is the fact that he's like just going through this. And by the way, she ends up offering him a job.
Wow.
He gives him a job and he gets a job. And she said he's never been looking for handouts or whatever it may be. But I was thinking about how many people, and you're like, where are you going with this? How many people, how many people walked past that man, didn't even see him as a human being?
See is the word. They didn't see him.
Didn't see him, didn't acknowledge him, purposely ignored him.
Right.
Have hearts that are so hardened and they are so selfish that you walk past a living, breathing person on the pavement and didn't think that I should do something because if I give him money, he might spend it on alcohol. If I give him money, he might use it on drugs. He needs to get up and move somewhere else because he doesn't belong here. I had to work hard for my own stuff and he should have to get up and move from here. How many people walk past? How long did that man have to be down because of so many people that walked past and didn't see him as a human being? And that is why we're supposed to do what we're supposed to do. That is why to kind of take it back to how we started, you have a conversation with someone and you see them as a human being, right? It is our responsibility, no matter what profession you have, to redirect your thinking and your finances to make sure that people have basic human needs, period. This is not I don't have it. I don't know them. They're not from around where I'm from. If you see someone that needs help in the office, in the cubicle next to you, you fight and scratch and claw to make sure that bottom line looks like it's supposed to look for a CEO that probably doesn't even know your name. Right. But when you see a person that's willing to say, hello, have a blessed day to you on the sidewalk, you write them off and don't have enough time to spend $3 on getting them something to eat. Right. So that's why we do. That's called walking in purpose. That's the missing piece to living a fulfilled life, right? When you say every day is a gift, tomorrow's not promised, that's the missing piece to get you over the hump, to keep you motivated, understanding that you have the power to change an individual's life by what you do and what you say.
And you said it a few times. I wrote it down. we look at people, but we see them? I look at someone in my office that's in a cubicle, or someone that comes in is having a bad day. I look at them, but do I see them? And I think that's what I wrote down. And I got to go back to it because I think it was so powerful. And hopefully people are still listening to that. You said, and what I wrote down is you're experiencing alcoholism. You're experiencing, and I wrote a blank. And what I put is insert addiction here.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that you're an alcoholic, maybe if we told people you're experiencing alcoholism, then at least I have an open door to get out of it. Let me just, and I'm using alcoholism because it's the first thing that came to mind.
Sure.
You insert an addiction here, because we're in a world right now and we're coming out of a pandemic, man. And I'm preaching the choir, I'm sure. We're coming out of a pandemic that I think immersed people in a lot of things that they are experiencing now, and they are not who they were before the pandemic.
Right.
But if we start putting labels on them, like you're an alcoholic, because of the pandemic, instead of saying, you know what, you're experiencing alcohol, man, I love that, dude. That may be the richest thing and you said a lot of great stuff, but I love the experience. Hey, you went into the pandemic and now you're experiencing alcoholism. But you're not an alcoholic, and the pandemic's over. Let's go. Right, man. That charts a different course for someone. And so I thank you for that. That right there is worth the price of admission.
Oh, there you go.
Man, that's really good stuff, dude.
And like I said, it goes both ways, because you have to prepare for both, because you can be experiencing success, and then it could all go away. And so you can't bank on the fact that this is going to be my experience for the rest of my life. Things are going to change, right? I was experiencing a certain level of my dream come true success in the NFL, and then it ended because of injuries. Then I started the foundation and I was experiencing some things with that. You have some highs and some lows, and it's just experiences. And then as a speaker, you go through waves. Like sometimes you're booked up every single day for 3 weeks straight, and then you might have a week or two or a month where there's a gap. During the pandemic, what are you going to do? You could be speaking every single week at multiple businesses around the world, for that matter. The pandemic hits, you're in your living room. So these experiences change. And now we're coming up out of this pandemic, and now everybody wants to have the experience of being in person. But even that can be, you recognize this could be taken away from you. And so again, don't take anything for granted. Even meeting someone that may not look like you, may not talk like you, may not act like you, may not have the same acumen on multiple topics like you do, but they are a human being with a heart. They're breathing, they're living, and that person can change your life just as fast as you could change theirs.
I don't want this to end. We could talk all night. At the same time, I want to value your time. And I think what you just said was a great stopping point for now. But man, let's do this again. It would be my honor to do it again with you, because this is awesome, man. You are so full of wisdom, and I could sit with you for hours. I mean that. But I think what I want to do is, because you said that, I want to end it right there, because I want people to hear. And I started with this, so you teed it up perfect for where we started, and that's you don't just say these things, man. You've lived it, and I mean that by saying that you just said, I may not look like you. I'm certainly not as physically fit as you. We did grow up in the same area code, 216. I think, were you a 216 or 440?
Yeah, man, I'm 216, brother.
See, A, right? But that's about the only thing you and I would probably have in common. I didn't play at Ohio State. There's a million things that we don't have in common, but man, you treated me as if we have a million things in common. Like we sat in the locker room together. We had, practice together every day. And I never, ever expected that from you. I didn't have any expectation, but man, you treated me that way. So I want to make sure everybody hears, you're not just saying, all the things we talked about. You don't just talk these things. This isn't just for a podcast. It's not so you can get a speaking engagement.
Sure.
Man, you live these things. And I think anybody that knows you from this or has met you before would probably agree that's what you are, man. That's who you are. And that's your character, as you talked about earlier. I do have one more question for you. Speaking of character, you played under Tony Dungy. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you just love Tony Dungy?
Man, he's absolutely awesome.
Okay.
And
honestly, he's
awesome. I mean, high character, man of faith. and just someone who just demands a certain level of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And he just will not accept excuses. But he will also do everything he possibly can to put you in a position to succeed. And just from a man's standpoint, making family a priority, making rest a priority, and just doing everything you need to do. And obviously making his faith for his teammate, not teammates, but just the players on the team and those things, making that a priority. He's an awesome man. And, he's been through so much, just the era he grew up in with just dealing with things of racism and not having the opportunities from a coaching standpoint, and just having to go through the ranks and waiting his time and doing what he was supposed to do and being a perfect match. There's a reason why Peyton Manning didn't win a Super Bowl until he was matched with Coach Tony Dungy. That's the one thing. He was great before Coach Tony Dungy and had some great coaches and great numbers, but he could not win a Super Bowl. And it took the right man of high character to earn the respect of Peyton Manning, to where he understood that this person is making me a better man and professional, not just caring about a Super Bowl. I don't think coaches wake up like, we're going to win a Super Bowl. It's like, can I build character, and can I put together a team of men of high character so that when adversity strikes, because it will, we can bounce back and get through it. And so Coach Dungy was absolutely amazing.
Awesome. Well, it's very clear to me that two people, you've had two coaches, Jim Tressel, Tony Dungy. Those guys clearly left fingerprints, on your life. And I couldn't think of two other guys that I'd rather choose to just even sit at their feet for a little bit and listen to. The greatest book I ever read was Quiet Strength by Tony Dungy. Okay. And I will probably say that the rest of my life. And I just kept thinking, is this guy for real? And everything I've heard and read and seen, he really is that guy. And incredible book. But it's clear that they've imprinted you because you're a very similar person like they are, man. And I say that again. High character, man. Just somebody that's treated me with the ultimate kindness. Even the time we spent today means just the world to me, that you would come on and do this for me. And hopefully I'm able to send some people your way for your podcast, your website, for Driven, all the things we've talked about. You're salt of the earth, man. I'm very appreciative of you. I really am.
No, I appreciate that, AC, man. And, just keep using your position again. My whole thing is use your position to help reposition those in need. And need sometimes is just hearing your podcast, hearing your guests, right? Like, you may need encouragement. You may need help. You may need support. You may need direction. You may need some leadership instruction. But you're doing a great job staying consistent. This is episode 94, I believe. And, you're on your way to 100. How many people can say they have 100 episodes by themselves doing their own thing? I would imagine there's many evenings and nights and days where you're like, man, I don't feel like it. I don't know who I'm going to have on, where the guest's going to come from, but you keep pushing. And that's the key, man, to consistently reveal your perseverance, your persistence, and your resilience, man. And you're doing a great job setting the example by what you do. You, my friend, do care enough to do something. So I really appreciate this platform and you allowing me to come on to hopefully make a difference in the lives of your listeners.
Guarantee it's going to happen. And now you're going to make me cry by saying all these things about me. So with that, man, thank you so much, Roy. I wish you nothing but the best. Let's do this again, okay? Because this was real good. And I think we just scratched the surface of a lot of stuff that we could probably talk about with Welcome to Unscripted. But, man, thanks. Let's do this again, okay?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Unscripted Podcast. Make sure to review and share wherever you listen to your podcast. It really helps out our mission to encourage everyone to live life unscripted. Until next time, keep living life unscripted.